So in today's class, we are going to start with two-dimensional array and pointer arithmetic. Okay. So two-dimensional arrays and pointers. Okay. So let's assume a two-dimensional array, two-dimensional integer array with say 2 rows and 3 columns. Okay. And let's initialize this. Suppose let's put some numbers 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. All right. Okay. So let's see what will happen in the memory space. All right. Okay. So a two-dimensional array A with 2 rows and 3 columns is nothing but two one-dimensional array. Each consists of 3 elements. Okay. Remember this idea very carefully. A two-dimensional array A with 2 rows and 3 columns is nothing but two one-dimensional array. Two one-dimensional array A0 and A1. Each consists of 3 integers. Clear? So if I draw this in the memory space, then a total of 24 bytes are going to be allocated, right? 4, 4, 4, 12, 12 into 2, 24. Okay. Got it? So if this starts from 1000, address 1000, then this will 400 will start from 1012, right? So 4 byte, 4 byte, 4 byte, right? And A0 is going to be the first one-dimensional array of 3 integers. A1 is going to be second one-dimensional array of 3 integers. All right. So what did we learn? A two-dimensional array with 2 rows and 3 columns basically means it consists of two one-dimensional array A0 and A1. Each consists of 3 integers. All right. That means it consists of two one-dimensional array A0 and A1. These two are one-dimensional array. Of 3 integers. All right. Okay. Now let's learn what is A. A is the name of the array, right? A is the name of the two-dimensional array. So what did we learn in the last class? What does the name of the array means? The name of the array points to the first element of the array. Right? This is true for one-dimensional array also. Okay. So name of the array points to the first element of the array. Right? That's what we have learned. So here, what is the first element? In case of a one-dimensional integer array, the first element is an integer, right? In case of two-dimensional array, the first element is not an integer. First element is A0, which is a one-dimensional array of 3 integers. Okay. As I said that the two-dimensional array with 2 rows and 3 columns consists of two one-dimensional array, each consists of 3 integers. That means the first element is nothing but the first one-dimensional array of 3 integers, which is A0. Clear? So that means it implies it A points to the first 1D array of 3 integers. So what is the first 1D array of 3 integers? Which is A0. So it points to the first 1D array of 3 integers. That means it is equal to ampersand A0. Okay. So A points to the first element of the array. First element here is first 1D array of 3 integers. Okay. That means it is ampersand of A0. Clear? Okay. So from this understanding, let me ask you the next question. Where A plus 1 will point to? If I add 1 with a pointer, what happens? From this understanding, answer this question. A points to the first one-dimensional array of 3 integers, where A plus 1 will point to.
Is it going to point to the next memory, to the next element, which is A1?
Okay, good.
To the next memory in the...
Good. So previously what did we learn? That if P is P is an integer pointer, then P plus 1 will point to the next possible integer location. Yeah? If P points to some location, P plus 1 will point to the next possible integer location. Yeah? If I add 1 to a pointer, it will point to the next possible that particular variable location. If P is a character, it will P plus 1 will point to the next possible character location. Right? Here A is a pointer to a 1D array of 3 integer, and A points to the first 1D array of 3 integer. That means A plus 1 will point to the second 1D array of 3 integer. Clear? So as your friend has said, it points to the second 1D array of 3 integers. So what is the second 1D array of 3 integer, which is A1? So it will point to that A1. That means it is going to be ampersand A1. Clear? So what's happening in the memory space? Let's try to understand. A points to the first 1D array of 3 integer, which is A0, and A0 points to the first element. Clear? Because A0 is the array of 3 elements. So A0 points to the first element. Alright. Similarly, let me erase this portion. A plus 1 points to the second 1D array of 3 integer, and A1 is basically the second array. That means this will point to the first element of that second array of 3 integer. Clear? That means A points to A0. That's how A equal to ampersand A0, and A0 points to the first element of A0. A plus 1 points to A1. That's why A plus 1 is ampersand of A1, and A1 points to the first element of the second 1D array of 3 integer. Clear? So that is basically, if I try to explain this pictorially, this is what's happening. Okay. So let's validate this. Let's write a program and validate this part. A is equal to ampersand A0. A plus 1 is equal to ampersand A1. Okay. Let's switch to the terminal, write a program, and let's validate this. Okay. Let's declare and initialize the 2-dimension array with 2 rows and 3 columns. So what did I say? A two-dimensional array of 2 rows or 3 columns consists of two 1D array of 3 integers. So 100, 200, 300. First 1D array of 3 integers. Second 1D array of 3 integers is 400, 500, and 600. Okay. Now let's print A. A equal to %p, and at the same time print ampersand A0. Okay. So we have learned that A points to the first 1D array of 3 integers, which is A0. So A is equal to ampersand A0. Clear? Similarly, we have also learned that A plus 1 points to the second 1D array of 3 integers, which is this, which is equal to ampersand A1. Okay. So let's see. So as you will see that A is indeed equal to ampersand A0, and A plus 1 is indeed equal to ampersand A1. Alright, so that is validating whatever we have learned conceptually. Not only that, what is the difference between A plus 1 and A0? How many bytes are added to A to get A plus 1?
Isn't it 12?
Yes.
Since
Can you see this? You are right, it's 12. So can you see this? This
it's
example.
from 0 to C.
Yes. So 4C and 40. So the difference is 0 to C means the difference is C. C means what? C means 12, right? A is 10, B is 11, C is 12. Right? So the difference is 12, which is also correct, right? Because A points to this location and B points to A plus 1 points to this location. So the difference is 4 plus 4 plus 4, 12. So 12 byte difference. Okay? So A plus 1 indeed points to the second 1D array. This you can validate from this difference. Okay, A points to the first 1D array, A plus 1 points to the second 1D array. Clear? Okay. Now let's move to the notepad and learn little more detail. All right. So A is equal to ampersand A0 we have validated. So that means asterisk A equal to nothing but A0, right? Asterisk A means value at A, which is A0. And what is A0 from this figure? A0 points to the first element. That means which is equal to ampersand of A of 0, 0. Right? Clear? Similarly, asterisk A plus 1 equal to this ampersand will be ignored. So A1. And what is A1? A1 points to the first element of the second 1D array, which is ampersand of A of 1, 0. Right? Alright. Okay. So then let's generalize this. Okay, this is for A of 2, 3. Let's generalize this. So let's assume that you have an array A that consists of say m rows and n column. Okay. So that means what did we learn? A is an array of m rows and n column means it consists of m one-dimensional array each consists of n integers, right? So this m one dimension array will vary from a0 to a m minus 1, right? So that means if I draw this, it consists of m one dimension array. That means first one dimension array is going to be a0. It will consist of n integers. Second one dimension array is going to be a1, and in this way, right? Okay. So in this array, let's try to express a of ij using pointer notation. A of ij means ith row and jth column. Okay. So from our understanding, can we express a of ij using the pointer notation? Okay. All right. So what is a of ij? A of ij means, or if I want to get the element of a of ij, I first need to go to the a of ith one dimensional array, right? And first go to the a of ith one dimension array first. All right. So a of I will point to the first element of the ith one dimensional array, right? And from here I need to go to j integer location, right, to get the jth element. So I need to go to jth integer location, and then I need to fetch the value from that location. Okay, try to understand this thing very carefully. A of ith row and jth column means first I need to go through the A of I array, right? Ith one dimensional array. And from the starting location, I need to go to j integer position to reach into this location. Okay. And there, from that position, I need to fetch the value. And what is A of I? A of I is the starting address of the ith one dimensional array. Right? So you have learned that A of 1 means asterisk a plus 1. Right? A of 0 means asterisk a plus 0. Right? So what is A of I? A of I can be written as
asterisk a plus I.
plus I, right? Because A points to the first 1D array. To reach to the ith 1D array, I need to add A with I. And the remaining part will remain the same. Okay, clear to all of you? Okay, again, let me explain. A of ij, if I want to go and fetch the element, first I need to go to the ith 1D array. And from the starting address, I need to go to the j integer location and fetch the element. Okay. And how can I go to the ith 1D array? I will start from A, then I need to add I, because if I add 1 to A, it will go to the second 1D array of n integers. If I add I, it will go to the ith 1D array of n integer. And then I need to get the, put an asterisk outside. Clear? So this is a very, very important formula. Okay. This is a very, very important formula. Okay. All right. So let's try to validate this using our program. All right. So first, let me print it. Print the entire array. So I is equal to variable. I is equal to 0, I less than 2, I plus plus. J is equal to 0, j less than 3, j plus plus. Let's see whether it is printing all the numbers. You will see that first 1D array of 3 integer is 100, 200, 300. Second 1D array of 3 integer is 400, 500, 600. Okay. So here I have used this notation, right? Okay. Now, what did I say? That if I want to replace this, how can I do so? I first need to go to the ith 1D array, and then I need to move j positions from there, and then I need to fetch the value from that location. All right. So if I run this, this is also going to retrieve the same thing. That means this is equivalent to this. All right. And then I have broken e of I. So e of I means ith 1D array. That means I need to start from A, and then I need to go to the ith 1D array, then put asterisk in the beginning. All right. If I run this also, you will see that I'm getting the same result. Okay. So that means all these three statements are equivalent. So we have learned arrays and pointers. Now let's see what are the limitations of arrays. So what are the limitations of array? So suppose you are writing int a 10. Correct? So that means 10 into 4, 40 bytes will be allocated in the memory in the compile time, right? So this is nothing but static allocation, static memory allocation. Okay, because 40 bytes is only allocated. It is static. It is known during the compile time, right? Okay. Now, suppose I do not know that how many bytes needs to be allocated. Okay. Suppose I'm asking the user to enter the size of the array, and I'm allocating sufficient byte to accommodate that many integers. All right. So in that case, I cannot write a10 because I don't know whether the user will enter 10, 20, 30, 100 or something, right? So in that case, in the previous class, we have learned that we can use variable length array where n is entered by the user in the runtime, right? This is called variable length array. But variable length array cannot solve all the problems. Okay. Variable length array means I basically want to dynamically change the size. I want to make the size variable. Whenever I need 10, I n equal to 10. Whenever I need 100, n equal to 100, and things like that, right? But we'll see that variable length array also have some limitation, and at the same time, variable length array is not supported by many compilers. Especially old compilers do not support variable length array. Okay, and even if they support, variable length array also has some limitation, as I'm going to present in a few minutes. So the solution is dynamic memory allocation. Okay. All right. Instead of static memory allocation, if I want to ensure that anywhere in the program, whatever memory I need, I will allocate at that time. For that, I need dynamic memory allocation because variable length array will also not solve all the problems. Okay, I'm going to explain this in a minute. That's why we need to learn dynamic memory allocation. Okay. All right. So in this class, we are going to learn mainly 4 functions for dynamic memory allocation. These four functions are malloc, calloc, realloc, and free. Okay, malloc and calloc are for allocating memory. Realloc is for reallocating. Okay, so suppose you have already allocated some memory. Now you want to allocate more memory. Okay, suppose you have allocated memory for 10 integer, but now you have realized that no, you need memory for 20 integers. So you need to reallocate. Okay. And free means you are deallocating. Okay. Because suppose in the middle of the program you realize that you have allocated memory, you have done some job, and now you need to free the space. So there you need to use the free function. So you can allocate, reallocate, deallocate. Okay. All these things you cannot, all these features you will not be able to get in any of the array implementation. All right. Okay. Now let's see where this dynamic memory allocation takes place. All right. So we have learned in the last class that there are four different memory segments. Right. One of the segment is called code segment. Where your instructions resides. Another is called data segment, where your static and global variable resides. Another one is heap, and another one is stack. So in the stack segment, all your auto variable, local variable, stack frames corresponding to different functions will reside, and the heap is used for dynamic memory allocation. Okay, so whenever we are going to use this function, whenever you are going to allocate memory dynamically, this will happen in the heap space. Clear? Okay, so till now we didn't touch the heap section. Now we are going to learn dynamic memory allocation, which will happen in the heap section. Okay. All right, so let's move to the terminal and learn the syntax of malloc, alloc, realloc, and free, and then we are going to come and discuss some other details. Okay. Okay. So let's first start with arrays, variable length array, and then I'm going to replace the variable length array with malloc or calloc function. Okay. So let's start with variable length array. So let's see. Let's declare an integer num. Okay. And I'm asking the user enter the size of the array, and then whatever the user is entering, I'm storing it in num variable. Okay. Num is basically the number of integer the array can store. Okay. So now, as I said that I can use variable length array. In this case, I will not be able to use static array because I do not know whether num is going to be 10, 100, or 1000. Okay. So I have used variable length. Okay. Now let's see. Suppose I'm initializing the element a0 equal to 100, a1 equal to 200, a2 equal to 300, a3 equal to 400, a4 equal to 500. Okay. So the num can be anything, say 10, 20, or anything. I'm just initializing the first 5 elements. Okay, the remaining element will be junk. All right. So now let's print it. I'm just basically showing whether the program is running properly, compiling and running properly. So for I is equal to 0, I less than size, I plus plus, percent, oops, some space, 80, A of I. Right? So let's compile. So less than size, sorry. This is now. This is the size of the array, but the variable used is now. Okay. So enter the size, let's use 10. So you can see that the first 5 elements are printed properly. The remaining positions are occupied by junk values. Alright. Okay. So now I want to replace this using dynamic memory allocation. Alright. Okay. So what is the syntax? Let's first use malloc function. So malloc function will take one argument, which is basically the number of bytes it needs to allocate. Okay. Malloc function will take one argument, which is equal to the number of bytes it needs to allocate. So how many bytes I need to allocate for storing num number of integers? It is num into size of integer. Okay. Size of integer in our machine is 4. So you can also write 4 into num, but for general purposes, I'm writing num equal num into size of integer. So this many bytes malloc needs to allocate. Clear? All right. Now, by default, malloc returns a void pointer. Okay. By default, malloc returns void pointer. So, as I want to store this in an integer array, I need to convert this to an integer pointer. Okay. By default, malloc returns void pointer. I need to convert it to an integer pointer, and then I can store it to an integer pointer. Okay. So A is an integer pointer which is going to store the starting address of the memory location that has been allocated by malloc. Okay, A will point to the starting address of the memory location that has been allocated by malloc. And also malloc will allocate contiguous memory location similar to the array. Array also allocate contiguous memory location. This is also going to allocate contiguous memory location. Okay. And the difference of variable length array and malloc is that this array is going to be stored inside the stack, right? In the stack frame. Malloc will be stored inside the heap. Okay. All right. And whenever you are going to use malloc, you need to include standard library.h header file. You need to use standard library.h. So let's see whether my program is running properly or not. So you can see that the first 5 elements are printed successfully. Remaining elements I didn't initialize. Okay. Now let's see how to use calloc function. So both malloc and calloc allocates the memory dynamically. Okay. The syntax is slightly different. So as opposed to malloc, calloc takes two arguments. First argument is the number of elements, and the second argument is the size of each element. Okay. Calloc will take two arguments. First argument is the number of elements, second argument is the size of each element. And similar to malloc, calloc will also return a void pointer, so you need to do a type conversion to convert it to integer pointer. And now you can write integer pointer a is equal to this. Okay. So if you run this, this will also work exactly in the same way. Okay. So that's how you can allocate the memory dynamically. Okay. All right. So let's see what's happening in the memory space quickly. So whenever you are writing main, as I said that one stack frame, inside the stack one stack frame will be generated, and here you are writing a is equal to malloc or calloc something, right? Integer pointer a equal to malloc or calloc something. So as I said that malloc will allocate memory but in the heap space, right? So in the heap space it is going to allocate sufficient memory to store number of integers. All right, and then I'm initializing the first element as 100, second element as 200, 300, 400, 500, and then other than that also there are some location that has been allocated. Okay, this is basically what's happening in the memory space. All right, and then it is going to return the starting address of this location. So a is going to point to the starting address in the heap space. Okay, a is going to point to the starting address in the heap space. So your stack frame is in the stack and your memory is allocated inside the heap. Clear? Okay, now let's see. Now suppose you have allocated number of sufficient memory to store number of integers. Now in the middle of the program you realize that you need to allocate more contiguous memory location. So instead of number of integers, you need 2 into number of integers. You need double space, double contiguous space. Okay. All right. So how can you do this? That's where the realloc function comes in, because you need to reallocate. You've already allocated memory, but now you need more memory space. So let's go back to malloc. Now you need more memory space, so you need to realloc. So what is the syntax of the realloc function? Realloc will take 2 arguments. First argument is going to be the pointer to the previous location. Okay, pointer to the previous memory that you have allocated, and the new size. The new size is 2 into num because you need to double the space. Okay, if you want to make it 4 times, you can write 4 into num. So 2 into num into size of integer. So this is the syntax of realloc. Clear? It will take 2 arguments. First argument is the pointer to the first or previous memory location and your new size.
Professor,
Yeah.
I have a question. So what if we have used 2 times the malloc function, and we have 2 different dynamic memory allocation, 2 of them?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So what your friend is saying that I have already allocated number of sufficient amount of memory to store number of integers. So if I need more space, I can use another malloc, right? But that will not ensure that 2 malloc is allocating memory into contiguous location, right? Okay. In the heap, wherever there are available space that is sufficient for storing the amount of memory that you are trying to allocate, the compiler will allocate that memory. So it will not going to ensure that 2 malloc is allocating memory in 2 contiguous location. Clear? Here I want number of integers in contiguous location. Here I want 2 into number of integers but in contiguous location. So basically the purpose of realloc is to extend A. Okay, A used to take this much of memory. I want to extend A to make it double. Alright, I want exactly contiguous memory location. Okay. So similar to malloc and calloc, realloc will also return void pointer going to convert it to integer pointer. And suppose I am using a different integer pointer to point to the newly allocated memory location. Okay. So now if I print I is equal to 0 less than 2 into num I plus plus percent 60 b of I. And so you can see that the previous 10 elements are printed. Now I've allocated more memory. So now if I print it, 20 spaces are printed. Okay, clear to everyone? So in this way you can reallocate the memory. Reallocate more memory, or you can reallocate less memory also. You can make it half also. Okay, you can reallocate more or less memory. Okay?
I have one question.
Yes.
Do we have to allocate to like a different? So you started with A and you changed to B. Could you reallocate into A, or like do like int star A?
Yes, you can reallocate into A also.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Redefinition of A. Okay, yeah, you can reallocate to A, but here the error is given because I have declared A twice. So you can reallocate in A. That will not give any problem, right? Okay, I have reallocated in different pointer because of some purpose. So let's go back to this. Okay, so now whenever you are reallocating memory, two things or two cases, two scenarios may appear. Okay, so let's go back to the notepad and try to understand what's happening in the memory space. Okay, so whenever you are reallocating memory, two scenarios may appear. What is the first scenario? So what do you want? You want more space in the contiguous memory location. That means you have already occupied number of integer position. You want to allocate another number of positions in the contiguous memory location. Okay, so the first case is that the dynamic memory, the heap has that much of space in this region. Okay, you want number of additional space, but the heap may not have, I mean, some of the slots may be allocated. Some of the slots may already been allocated by other programs. That may happen, right? In that case, the heap needs to allocate memory in a different memory location. Okay, so let's, in the first case is the simplest case where the heap has available memory location in this region. So in that case, it is going to allocate additional number of integer memory location, and then B will point to the same starting address. Okay, this is the simplest case. Okay, but this may not happen all the time because, as I said, that in this space there may be some already allocated memory. So in that case, the heap needs to move this entire set of bytes to a different memory location. Okay, so maybe it has availability in perhaps in this space. Okay, it has some occupied space over here. So suppose the memory is available from this space onwards. So in that case, from here, let me just erase this. So in that case, from here it will allocate 2 into num into size of integer bytes of memory from here. Okay, and it will move all the contents from the previous location to this location. So in the second scenario, B will point to this new location. Okay. So what I'm saying is that in the first case, A and B will point to the same location. In the second case, B will point to the new memory location. Okay. So if the heap has sufficient memory to expand your array in the contiguous memory location, then it will expand. It will give you the space. Otherwise, it needs to find sufficient space to store two-num number of integers and then move the entire existing array from here to here. And then the new starting address will be stored in B. Clear? So this is your case 2. Okay. So let's see what's happening in our case. Okay. In our case, mostly you will find case 1, because we are just storing 10 integers and then from 10 we are making 20. This is very small number of integers. So there will be sufficient memory so that you can expand 10 more integers. Okay, so mostly you will get case 1, but in general there may be situations where you may get case 2. Okay, so let's validate this. Most probably you will get case 1 only. So to validate this, here I am printing A equal to %t. Here I am printing B equal to %t. If I run this, you'll see that A and B are pointing to the same memory location, because I am just dealing with 10 and 10 into 220. So this is very small as far as the memory space is concerned. Okay. But in general, as I said, that A and B may be different. All right. Okay. Now, another point that we need to understand is that in heap, once you allocate the memory, it remains allocated until and unless you free it explicitly. Okay. In stack, we have learned that inside a function, for example, if I initialize a variable or if I declare a variable, the life and the scope of the variable will be limited within that function. That means once I come out of the function, the lifetime of the variable will expire and that stack frame will get deallocated. Right? When I go to a function, one stack frame will be allocated. When I come out of the function, that stack frame will be deallocated. That means the memory is deallocated when I am coming out of the function. In dynamic memory allocation, if you allocate the memory inside heap, it will remain allocated until and unless you explicitly deallocate or free it. Okay, even if you call it inside a function, and even if you come out of the function, still the memory will remain allocated inside heap. Okay, this is the difference between the way arrays are stored inside stack. Okay, and the way dynamic memory allocation happens. Dynamic memory will remain allocated until unless you explicitly free this. So there are one function called free, which is going to deallocate the memory. So whenever you do not need to use the memory space that you have allocated, you can free it so that that memory is going to be free for use. Okay. All right. So that is hardly going to change any output. So you have learned 4 functions: malloc, calloc are for allocating memory, realloc for reallocating, free for deallocating. Okay. All right. So let's again compare with the array, especially variable length array. Okay. As compared to the static array, dynamic memory allocation is more flexible because you can allocate memory dynamically. As compared to the variable length array, one of the problem is the variable length array is not supported in all the compilers, and in the variable length array you cannot reallocate. Okay, you cannot, you know, and variable length array will not give you that flexibility so that you can allocate some at some point, then you can reallocate something more at later point. Okay. Or it is not going to let you free also. So once you allocate this much of memory, it will remain allocated. Okay. Another very important limitation of variable length array that I am going to discuss using an example. Okay. So let me write a program and then I am going to discuss the difference. All right. Okay. Let me call this program engine array inside function. All right. So let's initialize an array. Now, and let's calculate the size. Equal to size of A divided by size of now I'm initializing an integer pointer B. Okay, and I'm writing B equal to double of A size. So what I want to do is that I want to write a function double that is going to take A and the number of elements, and it is going to double the values of this array and will return the pointer to that array to B. Okay, it is going to double the number of element values and then it is going to return the pointer to B, which is an integer pointer. Okay, and then I can print the values of B over here. For I is equal to 0, I less than size, I plus plus percent. 60 B of I. That's it. Okay, so let's write this function. So I'm showing this to show the difference between variable length array and dynamic memory allocation. And at the same time, till this point, I never written a program that returns an integer pointer. Okay, I have passed integer pointer to a function, but I never written a program that returns an integer pointer. So this is a program that will return an integer pointer. Okay, for these two reasons, I am discussing the program. So double A is the name of the array, which is an integer pointer. Size, and it is going to return an integer pointer. So here what I am doing is that I am declaring an array, say B, size is equal to size. Okay, so this is a variable length array. And then I am doubling the element of A and storing it to B. Okay. I equal to 0, I less than size, I plus plus. B of I equal to 2 into A of I. Doubling the element of A and storing it to B. Okay. And at the end, I am returning B. B is an integer pointer. Right. So it will be returned, B is going to be returned, which is stored in this B, and the elements are going to be printed. Okay, so let's declare the function prototype. Okay, so if I run this program, what do you think? If I print this, will you get the double values, or you will get the same value, or you will get something else? Let's see. So GCC, I have made a spelling mistake, but that's fine. So there is some problem. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so this is giving a warning, function return address to local variable. Okay, but let's run it. So this warning is a valid warning, but even if I run it, it is going to give segmentation fault. Okay, so it is given warning that function returns address of local variable. Okay, that's why it is throwing this warning. And if I am running it, it is giving segmentation. So what's happening? Why it is giving segmentation fault? Okay, let's open a new page. So inside the stack, whenever you are calling the main function, it is generating a stack frame corresponding to main, and there you are allocating an array. The first element is 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. Okay. All right. Now you are calling the function double. Okay. So whenever you're calling this function, the stack frame corresponding to double is generated. And here you are initialize or declaring B, and B consists of double values. So 200 double values of that of A, 400, 600, 800, and 1000. And then after doing this, you are returning the starting address of B to this function. Okay. Or let me try. So you are writing B is equal to double of this. That means you are returning the starting address of this array. So that means B is going to point to this location. That's what you are doing. Right? You are returning the starting address of this array. That means B is going to point to this location. Okay. But now here you are printing B. So if you print B, what's happening is that whenever you came out of this double function, this memory is deallocated. Right? Whenever you came out of this function, this memory is deallocated. Now you are printing B, which has already been deallocated. Right? Because this B was a auto variable, right? The B array was an auto variable. So when you are printing B over here, you are accessing memory that has been deallocated already. Okay, so that's why it is giving me segmentation part. We are trying to access the memory that has already been deallocated. Clear? So what is the solution to this? Let's see. How can I replace this line so that this is going to resolve the problem? And the problem is I am declaring b over here, okay, and I am assigning the value, but whenever I am returning from this function, this memory is getting deallocated. So I am trying to print something from the memory that has already been deallocated. So the solution is I need to store it in such a space, in a space where it will not be deallocated. Okay, I need to store this in such a space where it will not be deallocated. So where it should be stored? It should be stored in the heap. If I can store it in the heap, then this memory will not be deallocated, even if I come out of this function, right? So the solution is pretty simple. I need to allocate the memory dynamically, because I know that if I allocate the memory dynamically, it will be allocated in the heap space. And until unless I am explicitly going to deallocate the memory, it will remain allocated. Okay. So size into size of integer, and as I said that it will return a byte pointer, so I need to convert it to integer pointer, and then I can write integer pointer b is equal to this. Okay, so I'm basically using the doing the same thing, but I am allocating the memory in the heap space. Clear? So let's see whether this will solve the problem or not. Okay, so it is giving a warning because I didn't include the standard library.h file. Okay, so now there is no warning, and if I run this program, it is running perfectly, and it has indeed doubled the values. Okay, so just by changing this from this line to this line, the problem is resolved. Yeah. So what's happening? Let's quickly see this methodically. What's happening is that from here you are calling this double function, but now, or okay, sorry. So let me erase this portion. So now whenever you are calling the double function, one stack frame corresponding to this function will be generated, and here you are writing b is equal to malloc. That means in the heap space, a portion of the memory is allocated. Okay, and b points to the starting address of that memory chunk. And here you are writing b of I equal to 2 into a of I. That means 200, 400, 600, 800, and 1000 will be stored. Okay. So now you are returning b from here. So this is happening in the heap space. So now you are returning b. That means you are returning this address. So b is going to point to this location. Now whenever you are printing, it is going to print these elements from the heap. And again, whenever you return from this function, this stack frame will get deallocated, but now b points to this location. So whenever you're going to print the elements of b, it is going to print from this location. Okay, so the point is, even if variable length array will let you allocate memory, still whenever you want to do something inside a function and you want to return those changes to some other function, you need to use dynamic memory allocation instead of variable length array. Okay. So even if variable length array gives you some opportunity, dynamic memory allocation will gives you much more flexibility. Okay.